Alright, anyway, so we'll start with our summary we did last time, Exodus 3:13 through 4:17. Title was, Moses continues to question God's plan of using him to deliver the Israelites out of Egypt, and God gives Moses 3 miracles to use to convince them that he appeared to Moses. Aaron and Moses will be sent together. And our summary was, the burning bush has the angel of Yahweh, God, and Yahweh in it. And then, who are you? What is God's name? Eye, Asher, Eye, and Yahweh. Go, plunder the Egyptians. How will the Hebrews believe me? 3 miracles, staff into a snake, the leper's hand, and the Nile into blood. And then Moses says, I'm not a good speaker, pick someone else. And then he says, okay, really, I just don't want to do it. God gets angry, and God brings the older brother as the enforcer. Put that one in bucket number 3. Okay. And then, our summary this week, I think it was James. Thank you, James. Our title was, Moses returns to Egypt with Aaron, convince the Hebrews with the signs, and fail at their first meeting with Pharaoh. Okay, so what happens here? This was Exodus 4:18 through 5:9. What happens in this story? What's first?
Moses talks to Jethro for approval.
Very good. Okay. Then what?
Took his wife and sons, put them on a donkey and went to Egypt.
Yep. I'll call that Donkey Express.
God gave you instructions on what to say and
Very good.
what to do.
Okay.
God hardened Pharaoh's heart.
Yep, it says he's going to harden Pharaoh's heart. That's right. Very good. Then what?
Got some field surgery going on.
Field surgery. That's a good name for it. Field surgery creates the bridegroom of blood. Sounds like the title of a horror movie or something, doesn't it?
It does, but I don't want to imagine what that would look like.
Alright, then what?
Moses and Aaron reunited.
That's right, very good. Moses and Aaron are reunited. And then what do they do?
Gathered the elders and
Yes.
told them what God told them.
And the Hebrews. And then what?
They went to see Pharaoh and they
Yep.
butchered God's instructions.
That's a good word for it too. They went to see Pharaoh and butchered God's instructions. And how does Pharaoh react?
It breaks without straw.
Yep. Pharaoh says, what is this? Yahweh. Okay, I think that's about the end of it. Yeah, caught up? Okay. That will be our summary. So then we're going to jump back in, Exodus 5:10. Okay, Exodus 5:10. So, last time, Daniel had a really great insight and saved it for the service upstairs. So I want to make sure everybody online got to hear it, and just to cover it again, because it was really good. His point last time was we talked about how God's answer of what his name is, of I will be what I will be, meant that he didn't list a bunch of his attributes to explain himself to Moses and then do miracles to prove it. He just said, I will be what I will be, and you had to watch to see what he was going to do to figure out who he was, right? And so it was the attributes that we're going to learn from the things that he does later are going to be that he's outside of nature. We talked about that one. That's one of the biggest ones. This is a God who's outside of nature. This is the first time we've really seen that in the text, or that any of the people in the text have seen it. He's not bound to his territory. He's greater than all the gods of Egypt. He doesn't like suffering. These are the things we learn as the story progresses. But it's almost as if God is saying, if you want to know who I am, come and see. The phrase that we get from the New Testament, from Jesus. And so this is a fantastic fractal that we have when God's revealing himself to the world. He doesn't say, this is exactly who I am, and then prove it with miracles. He just shows it. And then we get to Jesus in the New Testament, and he doesn't claim the glory for himself. We get these clues where he says, before Abraham was, I am. And what the high priests finally arrest him or send him to be crucified for, where he says, you will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven. You know, he's essentially claiming godhood for himself, that I am a part of God, I am God. But he doesn't really say it. Instead we get like the book of Mark, where the book of Mark is just story after story after story, where Jesus does things only God can do. And then we're left with the question of who is this man that the wind and the seas obey him? Who can forgive sins but God alone, right? That it's the exact same story structure as, instead of me telling you, I'm just going to show you, and then you're going to figure it out from that. So I thought that was just awesome. So, good job, Dave. Another thing happened to me this week, though. I was talking to an old friend, of course, about this Bible class, because I try to tell everybody about, hey, you should read the Old Testament. Come watch us online. Do something. This is really great. And he was honest with me when I asked him about had he ever read the Bible, straight through, just start to finish. He said he had. He'd actually come to Christ later in life, so he hadn't grown up that way. But he said, I did read it straight through, but I really only like to read the New Testament. The Old Testament was pretty confusing. And so he's like, I'm happy to listen to Paul tell us we're all saved and it's all going to be good, but I don't know about the Old Testament. But it did get me thinking that we talked for the last couple weeks about how we're going to learn about God here, right? This is when God says, I will be what I will be. We're reading this so we can learn about him. And it reminded me of the first time, well, I should say, our goal here is not just to read about this and learn about him. Our knowledge should be moving us in a direction in our relationship with God. As we read the Old Testament, what should be happening is we should be developing a deeper love for God. And that was the thing that surprised me the most the first time I ever did an Old Testament commentary, and this stuff started to finally make sense, was that I got a much deeper love for Yahweh. I didn't realize that I had only been loving God through the lens of Jesus. But none of the people in this story knew anything about Jesus. They didn't know Jesus was coming, and one of the 10 commandments to them is you love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. That was there before Jesus came. When we read this story, we should be coming away with a deep love for God the Father. A deep love for the God in this story. And so that view of just seeing God through the lens of Jesus, I realized was very incomplete. And that's one of the things I hope that I can help bring out of this text for you guys as we go. That you can appreciate Yahweh and learn to love him. Because this God here, what we've seen so far is he's abandoned by everybody who he loves. Everybody he cares about rebels against him. All the people he made rebel against him. Right? And he is goodness and love itself. And we all rebel against him. You think he wants to be the disciplinarian? He has to punish our injustice. He is a God of justice, and he will do it. But as a dad or a mom, is that your favorite part of the job? Punishing the injustice? Do you think that God was happy when he had to send the plagues and watch these people suffer? You think he wanted to send the Babylonians to murder the Jews and carry them back out of their homeland? But why does he have to do that? It's because we rebel against him. Not just once, not twice, but for our entire lives. Because we can't just love our dad. As Jesus said, Abba Father. We should call him Abba Father, our dad. Like that's what that Abba word meant. Even if he hadn't sent his son to die for us, he deserved our love and our respect and our worship and our admiration. This God who hates evil, the God who heard the pain of Israel, the God who wants heaven to be a place filled with people, but without sin. The God who gets angry and punishes evil. That's the God we're supposed to love. And so that becomes important to our story now, because the story didn't give us a lot of detail about the evil that the Hebrews were feeling. But it does give us a lot of detail about the plagues that God enacts on those people. And so when people read the Old Testament, they come away feeling of God not love, but this fear as a disciplinarian, that he's just going to smite me for no reason or something like this. Instead of understanding, because it didn't give us all the details of the awfulness that happened to the Hebrews. So we need to remember that as we go into here. Don't forget what was done to these people as the plagues happen. When we're seeing the swarms of insects swarm over everyone, picture in your mind the taskmaster beating the young child in front of the dad just to watch the dad in pain. Right? Imagine some of the worst tortures you can imagine. And then the insects are coming in and stopping that. Because that's the God I love. The God who does want to stop evil. Isn't that what we all wish God would have done to Hitler? Why didn't you just give him a heart attack? Why couldn't he have died early? Right? Isn't that what you want him to do? Well, this is the story where he's doing that. He jumps in and you see he does want to stop evil. And he's going to do it before our very eyes. And it's something that we should love him for. Because he is good. So let's jump into that story. Chapter 5, verse 10. So the taskmasters and the foremen of the people went out and said to Pharaoh, "Thus says Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Go and get your straw yourselves wherever you can find it, but your work will not be reduced in the least." So the people were scattered throughout all the land of Egypt to gather stubble for straw. The taskmasters were urgent, saying, "Complete your work. Your daily task each day as when there was straw." And the foremen of the people of Israel, whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten and were asked, "Why have you not done all your task of making bricks today and yesterday as in the past?" And then the foremen of the people of Israel came and they cried to Pharaoh, "Why do you treat your servants like this? No straw is given to your servants, yet they say to us, 'Make bricks.' And behold, your servants are beaten, but the fault is in your own people." But he said, "You are idle, you are idle. This is why you say, 'Let us go and sacrifice to Yahweh.' Go now and work. No straw will be given to you, but you must still deliver the same number of bricks." The foremen of the people of Israel saw that they were in trouble when they said, you shall by no means reduce your number of bricks, your daily task each day." So one misconception people have about this is they think that the Hebrews just made the bricks without straw. They did not make the bricks without straw. That was the point. They had to go gather the straw. And if you're not a farmer, you may not fully appreciate you can only gather straw at one point in time in the year. There's about a 2 to 3 week period where you're going to get the straw. And if you don't get it then, you don't get it. If I don't get my straw bales made before it's gone, I'm not going to have straw for my cows the rest of the year. And so what Pharaoh is telling them to do, go find your own straw, they didn't have time to go out and plow a field, plant wheat, harvest the wheat, gather the straw, right? They're just running around trying to find anything they can to stick in the bricks. So it's not that they were just lazy or that they were too busy or they didn't want to work the extra hour to go find some straw. It was an impossible task. He had said, you have to do something that requires a whole year of planning in advance, and you have to do it now. But I think one of the most interesting parts of this part of the story is that the Hebrew foremen, these are Hebrews who are over their brothers, right? They elevated Hebrews to be the foremen. They don't blame Pharaoh. There's no point in this where they think Pharaoh's the bad guy. In fact, they seem to think that the taskmasters did this without Pharaoh's knowledge. That's why they wanted the meeting with Pharaoh. We want to get in. If we can just tell Pharaoh what they're doing to us, then he'll understand and he'll give us straw. It's all just been a big misunderstanding. That's how they speak to Pharaoh. He says, you want us to make these bricks, but you don't know what they're doing to us. They took the straw away. And they claimed you said it, right? That's what they say. People in their position, in slavery, under this what do they call it? The cult of personality, where they're worshiping the man, Pharaoh. You worship the Übermensch. It's inevitable that all of the people under them, no matter how poorly they're treated, view that person as an elevated thing that they love, that they respect and admire. And the Hebrew foremen have done the same thing here with Pharaoh. Under the Soviet Union, Dennis Prager pointed out that Stalin had these things called show trials. I don't know if you ever studied the show trials of the Soviet Union, but there was a point in the middle of his reign where everybody who was powerful under him, he murdered them all. Thousands of people. He destroyed everybody under him so that nobody could unseat him. That was his method of keeping power. But he didn't just murder them, he had to humiliate them. And so the show trials were where they would torture this person, or they would torture their family, or they would threaten to torture their family unless they went on TV in this trial and personally admitted that they had been acting as spies, that they had been fighting against the regime. And almost every one of those people in those show trials, do you know what their response was when they learned this was happening to them? If I could just speak to Stalin. This has all been a big misunderstanding. Just let me speak to Stalin and then we'll clear this whole thing up. But Stalin was the one that ordered it to happen. He's the one that made the show trials in the first place, and that's what Pharaoh has done. He's the one that made it, but the foremen can't see that because they've been trained like a dog with a shock collar. But the minute you start to think bad thoughts about the guy who's in charge, you have to push that down because that's what gets you in trouble. And so they can hate the taskmasters, but they can't hate Pharaoh. The supreme leader has to be good. And so in this way, Pharaoh is, our new word for the day, Machiavellian. Does anybody know who Niccolo Machiavelli was? Have you heard that phrase before? Machiavellian? If you have? Okay, good. So he's a guy, he's one of the saddest cases in history. That he got totally misaligned. That now this sort of behavior from Pharaoh is called his name, Machiavelli. He wrote a book called The Prince. It was a gift that he gave to a guy in the Medici family, hoping they could pull him out of exile. It was all of his accumulated wisdom as an ambassador and within political situations. He wrote it all down as advice to whoever was going to be in power. And it was called The Prince. And I read that book 20 years ago, just kind of for fun, because everybody talks about Machiavelli and stuff. And I was totally surprised. I thought it was going to be this maniacal instruction book on how to be an evil ruler, because that's what Machiavellian tends to mean. But it's not. It's actually 99% of it is intelligent, reasonable, pragmatic instructions for how to deal with a lot of different complicated political situations. And that's why that book today is still the basis of all modern statecraft. It was one of the great political writings in all of history. But the guy got a bad rap because of one line in his book. And his line said, that if you cannot as a leader be both loved and feared, it's better to be feared than to be loved. Because the point of the book was, pragmatically for the leader, staying in power is the end in itself. That's the important thing. You stay in power no matter what. And because he thought this is what the Medici family would want to know. And so he's saying, and he's probably correct, that if you're only loved but not feared, you won't stay in power long. If you are feared but not loved, you're still going to stay in power because people are going to be afraid to take you out. Okay? So it's not that it was wrong, but people took that as his advice is you should just be feared. But they missed that he said it's very important when you're feared, you must never become hated. If you become hated, you're in trouble. And so you can see that with Pharaoh here. I saw this actually, how this plays out, I think, is there was a documentary I watched years ago that really stuck with me about the Cambodian communist torture machine. It was called S-21, the Khmer Rouge killing machine. They murdered almost a third of the population of that country in the name of bringing utopian communism into being. And the guy who made this documentary, he went and found former guards of the prison where he was kept. And he brought the guards in to interview them and ask them questions. And I just watched this with fascination because I had no idea what the captors were going to say. When you're obviously going to ask, why did you do it? What are they going to say? What's somebody who did this going to say years? What's the Nazi going to say years later? Not when they're on trial. It's when they're talking to somebody in an interview. Like, how do you explain your life? There was one story they told where they had tortured this poor young woman for months, hours a day, every day for months, and they were trying to get her to confess to something, anything, so that then they could kill her. Finally, after months of torture that's so horrific, I won't recount it here, in a delirious stupor of unimaginable pain, they got her to sign a confession that she had acted against the regime by pooping in a corner as her little act of defiance. And they took the paper that she signed, put it in a filing cabinet, and sent her to the death pits. The purpose of these guards was, they were bureaucrats, and their job was to get the confessions, as if the people doing it knew it was wrong, and it would become okay if all the people signed the confession saying, I was fighting against the regime. If I could just sign it and put it in the filing cabinet. So that poor woman's pain was just so they could get a little piece of paper that sat in a filing cabinet that nobody ever looked again. So to a man, every one of these people, as they recounted these stories of what they had done to these poor human beings, they looked haunted, like they had not slept in 20 years. And every one of them said, if I had not done that to them, they would have done it to me. Every one of them saw themselves as a victim, not the perpetrator of the evil. And they were probably right, it would have been done to them. But no human being can see themselves as a monster. They just saw themselves as stuck in the machine that they couldn't get out of. So you can see it here with the foreman of the Hebrews, because Pharaoh knew this kind of Machiavellian stuff 3,500 years ago. You put people from the slave population in charge of the rest of the slaves. The Nazis did this with the Jews. They would take people in the concentration camps, and they would elevate Jews to be in charge of them, and it was their job to beat their fellow Jews. They were called kapos, and all the Jews hated them. But that's how you maintain power in a Machiavellian world. That's how you avoid being hated. Who did you hate in the concentration camp? You hated the fellow Jew who was the traitor who was beating you, not Hitler, who was in charge of the whole thing. Who did you hate here? You hated the foremen, who were the Jews over you. And the foremen, of course, saw themselves as stuck in the machine. They were just here. If I don't beat you, they're going to beat me, right? This is just my job. But the foremen owe their elevated status to the guy who put them there, to the guy they should be hating. And so they're forced to both fear and love the guy in charge. And that's how Machiavelli wins every time. And that's what happened here. So Pharaoh here is not playing checkers, he's playing chess. Look at how this turns out for him. None of these people hate Pharaoh. Even Moses doesn't blame Pharaoh. Moses blames God. Pharaoh's the good guy. The slaves don't hate him. And so you might ask, as I was going through this, I was thinking, we did have a discussion about fear and love a while back, right? That we should both fear and love God, both. And you can see now when fear and love... So don't miss that Machiavelli's point, which was correct. It's best to both be feared and loved. That is the best. it's not good to only love God and not fear him, and it's not good to only fear God and not love him. But when that gets applied to a human being, to Pharaoh, it's nothing but self-aggrandizing, selfish evil. But when you apply that to God, your fear keeps you from doing evil. When you apply love to God, you're loving the one who cared enough about you to come down and sacrifice himself for you. Not the guy who says, I'm not going to give you straw anymore and beat you when you can't make as many bricks as you used to. So it's good to both fear and love God, but it's bad to fear and love Pharaoh. All right. So verse 20. The taskmasters, or not the taskmasters, the Hebrew foremen here, they met Moses and Aaron who were waiting for them. And they came out from Pharaoh, and they said to them, Yahweh, look on you and judge, because you have made us stink in the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us. See, it's not their fault. It's Moses' fault. It's like they're just doing what they should do. Then Moses turned to Yahweh and said, Oh, Adonai, why have you done evil to this people? Why did you ever send me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, and you have not delivered your people at all. So Moses passes the buck. He doesn't say to the foreman, hey, God told me he was going to harden Pharaoh's heart. This is going to take a while. He just turns right around to God and passes the blame right on to God. Which is exactly what I would have done as well, by the way. But Moses was pretty hard on God. He directly accuses God of evil. Now, also realize that the word for evil in Hebrew is the same word as badness or pain. They're all the same word. So when you translate it as evil or bad or pain or something, you're making a choice as to what I think the context is indicating here. So he may have been saying pain, like it's your fault this pain is happening, as opposed to you've done evil to these people. But it's still the same sentiment. God does not get angry with him. He only ever got angry with Moses when he said, I don't want to do it. In fact, you're supposed to get angry at evil. He doesn't get angry at Moses because Moses is doing what you're supposed to do about evil. You're supposed to cry out to God and say, why, God, are you letting this happen? When you stop crying out to God about evil is when you've given up. And that's when he gets angry. But this should not have been a surprise to Moses, right? That God had told him this was going to happen. So why didn't God just make that first meeting work? Why did we have to go this? This is probably what Moses is thinking in his head right now. Why couldn't that have just worked? I went out on a limb for these people. They don't know me, and now I just look like a complete idiot. God actually gives us 3 reasons. We went over last time in detail about how God is showing us he is outside of nature. That's one of the big reasons here, right? He's showing everybody. So we're going to bump over to Exodus chapter 7, verse 5. He explicitly gives 3 reasons why this is getting stretched out like this. So Exodus chapter 7, verse 5, should be about a page over. He says, the Egyptians shall know that I am Yahweh when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring out the people of Israel from among them. So one reason we get all the plagues is so the Egyptians will know that he exists. There is a Most High God, that he exists. Remember, that's what Yahweh means. It means he is. And they will know who I am when this happens. Next one, Exodus 10, verses 1 and 2. Flip a few more pages. And then Yahweh said to Moses, go into Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, that I may show these signs of mine among them, and that you may tell in the hearing of your son and of your grandson how I have dealt harshly with the Egyptians, and what signs I have done among them, that you may know that I am Yahweh. So it's so the Egyptians will know that Yahweh exists and he is him. It was so Moses will know. It is so Moses can tell his grandkids about Yahweh and all the signs that he did. And it is so that we can be sitting here reading this book right now. Right? It's much more interesting with all the plagues. If he had just taken them out, the story might not have survived. And the last one is one you wouldn't expect. Is Exodus chapter 12. I'll print that one out. Oh, there it is, verse 12. A couple more pages. Chapter 12, verse 12. I got it. And he says, "For I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, and I will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and on all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. I am Yahweh." So the first ones, the Egyptians, the Hebrews, Moses, Pharaoh's going to know that he's Yahweh. They didn't know that he was Yahweh. The gods of Egypt do know that he is Yahweh, and he is going to exact judgment on them. And so that's why this gets stretched out into 10 plagues. That's how you know it's him, and that's how he's going to punish each of these Egyptian gods as we go along. So, chapter 6, verse 1. God answers Moses after Moses said, "Why are you doing evil?" But Yahweh said to Moses, "Now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh. For with a strong hand he will send them out, and with a strong hand he will drive them out of his own land." God spoke to Moses and said to him, "I am Yahweh. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as El Shaddai. But by my name Yahweh I did not make myself known to them. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land in which they lived as sojourners. Moreover, I have heard the groaning of the people of Israel, whom the Egyptians hold as slaves, and I have remembered my covenant. Say therefore to the people of Israel, I am Yahweh, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from slavery to them. And I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great acts of judgment. I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God, and you shall know that I am Yahweh your God, who has brought you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. I will bring you into the land that I swore to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to you for a possession. I am Yahweh." Moses spoke thus to the people of Israel, but they did not listen to Moses because of their broken spirit and harsh slavery. So this is not how I would have responded to Moses if I was God. How I would have responded to Moses would first be to say, "Who do you think you are, Moses, accusing me of evil?" Isn't that what he said of Job? That's what he said to Job. "Who do you think you are, Job? Who do you think you are, Moses? Where were you when I created the world?" Pharaoh's the one who did the evil, not me. Where's your blame for him? Did you accuse him of evil to his face? Are you more scared of him than you are of me? Besides, you're the one that screwed up. Did I not tell you what you were supposed to say? And did you say that? No. Did you do any miracles? No. Did you tell him I was going to kill his firstborn son? No. Besides, I told you this was going to happen. I told you that he was going to harden his heart, and I was going to harden it. So why do you now act like you had no idea that this is what the plan was? That's how I would have responded to Moses. That's not how God responded.
What did El Shaddai mean again?
God Almighty. We translate it as God Almighty, but we don't really know. It's entirely just looking at the parts of the word and trying to relate them to other Hebrew roots and figure out if they're related. So we translate it God Almighty. Another really popular one is God of breasts. It's actually Shaddai is similar to the Hebrew word for breasts. So strangely, we translate it as God Almighty is like big and powerful, masculine, and that alternative thing is sort of the God who takes care of us, the God who nurtures us. So I don't know which one it is, because nobody else seems to know which one it is. But those are the two that I do know of. In this instance, he seems to be using it just as a name, as I identified myself as El Shaddai. God's answer to Moses, though, is not like my answer. He does not get angry when Moses is struggling with him and struggling with evil. Instead, his answer is more like, just hang on, Moses. You are going to see what's going to happen. He doesn't address Moses' accusation of evil at all. which is really surprising to me. He doesn't say what, I can't believe he doesn't say Pharaoh did the evil, not me. He doesn't even address it. I don't think that means he's implicitly acknowledging, yeah, I did evil. You know, I don't think that's the case. I think it's just not worth him responding to it. That he understands where Moses is coming from. So there's no use arguing this point with him. He's just saying, Moses, I understand what you're feeling. This answer is God saying to Moses, I understand how you're feeling, Moses. It makes sense to me. It's not unexpected. You're not wrong in how you're feeling right now. It also teaches us that I think God has broad shoulders. He can take our accusations. We can accuse him of a lot of stuff, and he's not going to just respond defensively immediately to us. He's going to worry about what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and how to get us out of the rut that we're in. And then his third part of the answer is a series of 7 promises. And so they are God's way of saying, it's almost like God is saying, evil is temporary, but my promises are eternal. And in this little passage, we see God's third answer for theodicy, his third answer for the problem of evil. The first answer was Job. Who do you think you are, Job? You think you know the plan better than me? That was his first answer for why evil happens. Second answer we saw was Habakkuk, right? Where he says, look, you live by faith in the face of evil. Evil is here. I'm using it for my own purposes, and you don't worry about that. You focus on living by your trust in me. And his third answer is, the pain and evil of this life is temporary. I am making eternal promises to you, and I know how bad it feels. But you've got to stay focused on the end of the race. Run the race. And you will see in the end, even though you can't see it now. Now, that does not help you when you are in the middle of the pain. It really doesn't. But there is hope in it. And Paul actually tells us this. Let's turn to Romans chapter 8, verse 18. This third answer, I think this is the most compelling answer to theodicy in the Bible.
Romans 18?
Romans chapter 8, verse 18. Paul says, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revelation of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies." So Paul is telling us the same answer. As much as we're groaning now, look forward. Heaven is eternal. Evil is temporary. As bad as it is here, heaven is going to be better than you can imagine, and it will last forever. But there was a potential contradiction in the text that we had here back in 6. I don't know if you guys caught it. You have to kind of go look it back up. And I like to make sure and call these all out so nobody surprises you with them on the street one day. The Bible's full of contradictions. So verse 3 of chapter 6 in Exodus said, God said to Moses, "I am Yahweh, I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as El Shaddai, but I did not make my name Yahweh, but by my name Yahweh, I did not make myself known to them." And so we won't turn there, I'll just read you the verses, but back in Genesis 15:7, when Abraham was coming back after the slaughter of the kings, God speaks to Abraham and says, "I am Yahweh, who brought you out from Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to possess." And in Genesis 28:13, with Jacob, at Jacob's ladder, it says, "Behold, Yahweh stood above it and said, I am Yahweh, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give to you as your offspring." So it's pretty clearly God himself used the words, "I am Yahweh," to those people. And here he says, "I did not identify myself as Yahweh to them." But remember, we have the word name, meaning label in English, but they had polysemy. And so the word God's using here by his name is also his essence. Okay? God did not identify himself by his essence to Abraham and Jacob. They don't know anything about him. He's just their tribal God. What Moses and the Hebrews are about to see is a complete escalation in understanding what in the world Yahweh is, who he is. He did not enact 10 massive plagues of nature for Abraham or for Isaac or for Jacob. There were very few miracles for those guys, right? There was just babies came from barren women, right? There's not much miracles. Now we're hitting the miracle phase. God is saying, I am revealing more of my essence. I'm revealing parts of my essence to you that I did not reveal to them. But in English, it sounds like a contradiction because we use name to mean label. So that's the explanation of that contradiction. It says, though, that when Moses related all these promises from God to the people, they didn't listen to him. It didn't do any good because of the harshness of their slavery and the broken spirit. And so we saw when the story started with the burning bush, I said one of the iconic symbols of the Jews was the burning bush, right? That it's burned but never consumed. They've been burned all through history, but they're still here. I think now we can see another symbol of the Jews, which is a feral cat that doesn't want to be held. Have you ever tried to hold a feral cat? And you're convinced you can just impart warmth and calmness and to it, and you just squeeze it tighter and tighter and tighter, and all it does is scratch the heck out of you. And that's where Israel's at right now. They can't accept God's love for them. They can't accept what he's going to do for them. God has not made a lot of promises to humanity so far, and he came and just gave 7 to these people. The creator of the universe did, and they couldn't hear it because they're the feral cat that scratches you when you try to love it. God knows this is not going to be easy. It'll be easier, as we said last time, to pull the people out of slavery than it will be to pull the slavery out of the people. And these 7 promises are his start of that recuperation process. So I don't know about you guys, when I read the 7 promises, they sound kind of repetitive. And I just read right over them most of the time that I went. It turns out these are some of the most important things in the entire Bible. Our first clue to that should be that there were 7 of them, right? 7, the number of completion. This means this is an important thing. So let's write these out first to get them, just so that I don't forget one along the middle. Number 1, the first promise was, I will bring you out. And the next one is deliver you. I won't keep writing the I will. It'll just be I will deliver you. The third one is I will redeem you. An outstretched arm. Outstretched arm and great judgments. The fourth one was, I will take you to be my people. The fifth one is, I will be your God. The sixth one is, I will bring you into the land. And the seventh one was, I will give it to you for a possession. These are the 7 promises that God made to Israel. And when the Jews to this day celebrate the Passover, they have a ceremony in their houses called a Seder, where they do certain actions, rituals, they say like scripted lines, the kids read certain parts, they eat bitter herbs to remember the bitterness of slavery, things like this. And they drink 4 cups of wine at that dinner, representing the first 4 of these promises. The first cup at the beginning of dinner, I will bring you out. During dinner, deliver you. At the end of dinner, redeem you. After the ceremony, then take you to be my people at the end. They recite all 7 promises, though. So every year, every Jew on the planet that practices, even the non-practicing ones usually do the Seder. They recite the 7 promises that God gave them every year since this happened. Thousands of years. And they told me, or what I heard from the Jewish commentators, was that they only drink wine for the first 4 because they decided that was probably enough wine for one night. 7 glasses of wine was too much. But recognize that our God, our Savior Jesus, was a practicing Jew. So every year of his 32 years of life, he went and recited these 7 promises and drank those 4 cups of wine. Except at his last Passover, the Last Supper. It says in the text that he drank a glass of wine at the end of dinner, and then he says, I will not drink the fruit of the vine again with you until I see you again in the new kingdom. And so that dinner, he drank 3 glasses of wine. He drank the one where I will bring you out. He drank the one where I will deliver you. He drank the one where I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and great judgments. And this is the cup that we drink in communion when we celebrate communion here. It's the 3rd cup, the redeemed cup. But he did not drink the cup to take you to be my people until after he died and rose again. This is the last one. He will redeem us with his crucifixion. But in the end, we get to be his people. And so understand that according to the New Testament, you are now a Jew. I am a Jew, and you are a Jew. We are all Jews. We are adopted Jews. We are not as great as the original Jews. We were grafted in, right? But God treats us all equally. We were grafted in through Jesus, avoiding drinking that 4th cup until after his crucifixion. But we are still here as slaves to sin. And so when you're struggling with that sin that you can't escape, that you just want to quit and you can't get over it, go back and reread these promises, because in here they were made to the people of Israel. But because you are a Jew, they were made to you as well, now that Jesus adopted us. So God is telling you, I will bring you out. I will deliver you. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and great judgments. I will take you to be my people. I will be your God. I will bring you into the land, into heaven, and I will give it to you as a possession. Those are promises to each of you individually in this room today. So when you are struggling with that sin, just remember he promised he will bring you out of that slavery one day. Keep up the fight. There's a very, very sad part of this. It's the last sentence. It says that the people couldn't hear God's promises because of their broken spirit. And it just breaks my heart, because first you realize your spirit can be broken. It's like a bone. It can be broken. It's so sad. A broken leg keeps you from walking. A broken arm keeps you from throwing a ball. But a broken spirit prevents you from experiencing hope. And it prevents you from actually hearing God. And it's impossible for those of us who have never really experienced a broken spirit to fully empathize with what that is like. Just like if you've never broken a bone, you don't really know how that feels, right? So we shouldn't just pass over this phrase without at least acknowledging the depth of despair that these people were in. Because remember, we are Cain in this story. Our spirit would be broken too if we were in their position. We wouldn't have heard God either. And the best explanation for this that I've heard was from a wonderful short little book by a man named Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. It's pretty short. I know a couple people in here have read that book so far, but Frankl recognized a lot of powerful truths in that book, but one of them is that the human being can survive a tremendous number of awful things. No food, torture, humiliation, but they cannot survive the loss of hope. They just cannot survive the truly broken spirit. He saw firsthand that the prisoners who lost hope in the camp were the ones who died. They actually had a name for them. They were called Musulmaner. in the camp slang in Germany. They were these apathetic, spiritually broken people. He said they just looked like the Walking Dead. They looked like zombies. And it was not long after they looked like that they died. He said the prisoner who had lost faith in the future, his future, was doomed. With his loss of belief in the future, he also lost his spiritual hold. He let himself decline and became subject to mental and physical decay. Those who know how close the connection is between the state of mind of a man, his courage and hope, or lack of them, and the state of immunity of his body will understand that the sudden loss of hope and courage can have a deadly effect. And the example he gave was right before Christmas 1944 in the camp, there was this huge spike in deaths. Not because any of the physical conditions had changed, but because the approach of the holiday of Christmas coincided with the complete loss in any hope of liberation. And he said that the prisoners died less from lack of food or medicine than from lack of hope, or lack of something to live for. But Frankl had an insight in the camps that I think got him through, and it is the point of his book. He realized that the Nazis controlled every single aspect of their lives: when they ate, when they went to the bathroom, when they slept, when they worked, what they thought, when they experienced pain, when they spoke, everything. But even in that absolute hell, there was one thing the Nazis could not control, no matter how hard they tried. There was one thing within Victor that the Nazis could not take from him. They could not control how he reacted to their treatment of him. And that is where he found his hope. He went on to found a famous form of psychotherapy known as logotherapy, based entirely on this idea. You control how you react to the things that happen to you. And in the end, that's really the only thing you can control. So when Jesus tells you to turn the other cheek when your brother slaps you, when he tells you to love the enemy when he does evil to you, he's telling you you can control how you react. You are not simply a mindless machine that is forced by your enemies to react in pre-programmed ways. And so these Hebrews here, who are acting in the pre-programmed way, remember, they just had their hopes raised. Moses was there. They were coming by. They were seeing the signs. Their brains had ticked over from the despair and the pain to, we're going to get out of here. Tomorrow's the day, remember? And you know what came tomorrow? No straw. And extra beatings. And Moses crying out, God, why did you do evil to these people? It's no wonder their spirit was broken. Maybe this eternal pain really is eternal. But that first encounter with God failed so miserably that even God could make 7 promises to them. And because the splint that was holding their broken spirit together had broken, they couldn't hear it. It could not be reassembled. The only thing that was going to fix it was 10 plagues that finally took them out. So that's where we are now. We'll end there for today. This is heavy stuff. Exodus is heavy. It gets better. It really does. There is some hope coming, guys.